Shall we give it a start? Good morning, everybody. My name is Theo de Bruin, and I'm hosting this webinar as a chair of a working group called Nature and Recreation, one of the working groups of Eurosite. A warm welcome to everybody for this interesting topic we have today on rewilding and tourism. We found Bart Schuts and Victor van Doorn willing to present this theme, and later on they will introduce themselves. So that's a part I will skip. Eurosite, as some of you will know, but is an association of organizations in the field of nature protection and nature management, and the main goal of Eurosite is to have and to be a platform to exchange knowledge and experience, and with all the expertise in Europe available, find solutions for problems and other challenges. And one way to do so is to have these working groups, of which nature and recreation is one of them. A couple of, well, if you have questions, please write them down in the Q&A section, and after the presentation, we'll have time to discuss them. And on forehand, since I have the tendency to forget it, but we have Jennifer Alexander, being a staff member of Eurosite, doing all the work behind the screen and helping us out with the technical things about this webinar. So on forehand, thanks for that, Jennifer. I'll hand over the floor to Victor and Bart to introduce themselves and to start the presentation.
Thank you very much, Theo, and well, great being here to share what we're working on and to also pick the brains of all those attending with regards to recreation and tourism. Victor and Bart is sitting right here next to me. We're currently in Abruzzo in the Central Apennines, one of the landscapes we work in, using one laptop because the Wi-Fi connection might be a bit spotty every now and then. Just to briefly introduce who we are, Victor, I joined Rewilding Europe well over a year ago, studied biodiversity conservation, worked as a strategy consultant after, and am now working in what we call the Nature for People team, specifically on helping local entrepreneurs and local businesses to benefit from the fact that there's wilder nature returning to these areas. And Bart joined more recently together with me.
My name is Bart. I have a background last 20 years as an entrepreneur, especially in the fields of digital marketing and ecotourism. I think a nice combination for being a tourism manager right now at Rewilding Europe, because we have a strategy that we will explain in more detail, which is also based on a digital aspect.
Yeah. So what we'll go through today is just a bit of context of where what's the status in Europe currently. We'll give a brief introduction for those of you who aren't aware of what rewilding exactly is. Then we'll look at what we as an organization do, specifically the role for tourism within the work we do and the initiatives we're currently working on. There will be some time to ask questions in between, and we also might have some questions for you towards the end. So without further ado, I would say let's jump in. So as probably everybody that is in this call knows, because everybody's kind of involved within the naturescape, we're a bit at a crossroad within Europe with regards to nature kind of conservation, but also restoration. In that what we see across the continent is that the ecological integrity is degrading, and this is due to a myriad of factors, climate change, but also economic policy, there's geopolitical unrest. And this degradation we even see in many of the protected areas, which is a bit of a pickle we're in as a continent with regards to the status of nature. On top of that, we know that if we want to continue business as usual, and if we want to really make sure that the state of nature is preserved or even ideally restored, there's a lot of money required. And that's money that's not necessarily there, either because there's other aspects within politics that require this funding. It might not be top of mind for policymakers. And there's just a very big challenge for nature within Europe with regards to decades of well, certain policies that have been set, which means all in all that if we want to really, as humans, manage and restore nature through man-made options, question is, how are we ever going to be able to pay for it? Simultaneously, what we see is that a lot of people, especially young people that live in more rural areas, are moving towards cities. And so in 2020, about 80% of people in Europe were living in urbanized areas. And if this trend continues, by 2035, the estimates are that about 20 million hectares of rural land are going to be abandoned or depopulated, which from an economic and social point of view is a challenge, but from a natural point of view, that also provides a massive opportunity. So all in all, if we take those things into account, the fact that the status of nature is under pressure, that there's a money challenge, and that we see that people tend to move from the rural areas to cities and more urbanized areas, we need a new way to kind of bend the curve that we're currently on. If we continue with the business as usual, we know that the natural state in Europe and the ecological integrity will continue to decline. We also know that if we want to increase conservation efforts the way we've traditionally done, there's a lot of money required. So if we want to change this and kind of have more natural restoration, we need to maybe think out of the box in some places, which is where rewilding comes in that it's well, a relatively new approach, getting more mainstream by the year. And for those of you who aren't aware of exactly what rewilding entails, it's really about letting nature take care of itself. So it's really about making sure that when it comes to ecological functioning, all the processes are in place to enable nature to find its own balance and to shape the processes that both on land and marine and kind of make up the natural world around us. But it's about more than just ecosystems. So it's about more than only reintroducing species or making sure that forests are able to take care of themselves or breaking dams to restore rivers. It's also about creating the right system around it of people actually living in these areas and having to coexist and deal with the animals and the kind of the natural environment they're in. Which is specifically what we'll focus on today. So creating economic benefits and making sure that people feel some sense of connection to what is happening around them is key. And the idea is that if we manage to have this kind of future-oriented process where people reconnect with nature, where we restore these natural processes, then in the long term, both people and wildlife and climate are able to benefit from kind of a change in the curve that we're currently on. Having said that, it's rewilding as an approach. It's not a fixed end state we're working towards. It's not that there's a clear definition of this is the final kind of level of wildness that we want to have. But it's about moving across a spectrum where a lot of the actions we take help create, restore these natural processes and make Europe slightly wilder. So for instance, when it comes to rivers, if you currently have big dams and there's no aquatic species in there, there's no sort of forms of water flows or connection to other kind of river bodies. By removing small dams or by reintroducing aquatic species like trout or crayfish, we help slowly bringing that river up a scale of well, wildness or wilderness. Like I mentioned before, it's a relatively new approach. It is becoming more and more well, mainstreamed in that there's a lot of academic research being done. Some of you might have seen the article last year in The Guardian about the herd of bison that we we manage in Romania and how they actually help being a carbon sink. So it's becoming more ingrained as a concept, and in that regard, it's an exciting field to work in. Because this concept is relatively new, probably also good to give a brief introduction of what we as an organization do and kind of where we came from and where we're at now. So we started in 2011 as Rewilding Europe. The European headquarters are based in Nijmegen in the Netherlands. And we currently work in 10 landscapes across Europe. That's different habitats, different types of local cultures, different types of wildlife compositions and ecosystems. And each of these landscapes has their own local team, which we call landscape teams, which is really the boots on the ground, people that are ingrained in the local community, that do the fieldwork actions, that make sure that the rewilding interventions that we aim to achieve are actually done. On top of that, in Nijmegen, there's a central team, which is what Bart and I are part of. And we help kind of make sure that lessons learned are copied across, but also kind of pan-European initiatives we pick up, which we'll dive into in a bit. There's about 120 of us now all over Europe. Last year and this year, we have a budget of about 20 million. And we're really working on kind of two interconnected roles as a nature NGO, which is firstly to demonstrate how does rewilding work and kind of all these interventions that we're doing, do they achieve the results that we expect them to do? And the second one is to make sure that if we have knowledge or if there are ways in which we can help scale up this whole approach across Europe, that we enable others to learn from the lessons and the challenges that we faced, and in that aspect really catalyze rewilding as a movement all across the continent. Now within the organization, we kind of have divided ourselves up in 4 types of teams that do interventions. First one is Wilder Nature, so they're really focusing on making the ecological and ecosystem processes function again as on a big scale. So it's about species reintroduction, it's about breaking down dams, it's about ensuring that there's kind of mosaic landscapes through natural grazing. So it's all on the ecological interventions. Then there's the work that Bart and I, among others, with some colleagues do within the Nature for People team, which is very much about making sure that the local economy can benefit from the fact that all these species are returning and that these ecosystem processes are becoming self-reliant again. Because the philosophy is that in the long run, if you want to make sure that all the reintroduction work and all the ecosystem work that's being done, that's protected and also well regarded by people actually living in these areas, they need somehow to feel that they're actually benefiting from it. So that's specifically why we focus on tourism today, because that's one of the aspects in which we can provide economic but also social incentives, and also making sure that people feel some sort of pride for the area they live in and all the interventions taking place there. And then next to these two kind of intervention pillars, there's a very strong team around engagement. So that's much about communication, storytelling, making sure the message gets out there. And then scaling up, which is very much focused on the catalyzation aspect. So sharing the knowledge and the tools that we as an organization are developing over time. So the way we work is that the way we look at these areas where we're kind of demonstrating rewilding is there's lots of different combinations of people, of animals, of habitat types, and each of those combinations has its own special kind of characteristics or dynamics between them. So what we try to do is by taking these combinations, we aim to demonstrate that certain ways of kind of executing interventions actually helps to create either wilder nature or kind of the people aspect in terms of how people interact with that wilder nature. And there's a myriad of them. So this kind of the 6 big ones with regards to the natural aspects focus on habitat and wildlife dynamics. And then when it comes to people, there's, like I mentioned, the ways people interact with these kind of combinations, which is mainly on hunting, but also experiences, which will be one of the main focuses today. And just to give you a couple of examples of kind of what this abstract way of looking at it actually means, I figured let's focus on a couple of the landscapes and a couple of the kind of the themes that we're working on there. So for instance, in Spain, in the Iberian Highlands, we are actively trying to restore natural grazing processes, in that if there's grazers that kind of make sure that all the undergrowth is trampled or is eaten up, you get this more mosaic landscape that's also more resilient when it comes to wildfires. So what we're doing there is we're purchasing grazing rights. There's currently about 20,000 hectares of grazing rights we have under management. And then using those grazing rights, we reintroduce semi-wild horses, so local breeds, but also, for instance, in Spain, there's a herd of Przewalski horses now, as well as the toros, which some of you might be aware of, but that's yeah, almost like kind of an ancient type of cow that we're trying to well, artificially going back in time, reproduce, so to say. And these animals, they interact with the landscape in such a way that it restores this ecological process, but it also provides an incentive for certain nature-based economies, specifically around ecotourism. So people that want to come view these, see these animals, experience the way that this natural grazing is being implemented. So it's an ecological theme or modeled natural grazing, but it also has this people component of how do we bring the local economy and external and regional visitors on board. Similarly, in the Velebit, we're trying to prove that or demonstrate that by utilizing hunting concessions in a slightly different way, it's more beneficial both in the long term for the hunting community as well as for the wildlife populations. So there, instead of grazing rights, we're purchasing hunting rights, in that the team there in the Velebit is currently one of the largest hunting right owners of the country, to the extent that they can actually help influence national policy setting. So they're able to, in cooperation with the government, to get moratoria on certain species. For instance, the chamois, that there's no hunting chamois for a couple of years to make sure that the population can recover. But also if there's reintroductions of deer or other types of herbivores, that there's a certainty that that population can actually settle in and grow over time, rather than well, helping sponsor the local hunting association, so to say. And the whole idea there is that if ecotourism as an alternative to hunting can become economically beneficial enough, then it changes the local perception, it changes local attitude towards the way that these species interact with the humans living in that area, which again helps create the support for the whole rewilding movement. And then finally, an example of where we are currently. Bart and I are in Abruzzo right now, in the Central Apennines, where the focus is very much on coexistence. So it's really about the Marsican brown bear that's inhabiting this area. The population is increasing, but that also means that there's more and more kind of spots or places where these bears interact with humans. So it's very much about making sure that the way that the local communities here and the villages regard and deal with bear interactions. So when it comes to these coexistence aspects, it's about education, but also about helping install bear-proof bins, about making sure that when people are driving by the road at night, that they know where to kind of slow down. So there's some very simple kind of ways to ensure that this population is protected to some extent. And it's about working with some of the national parks in this area and making sure that there's kind of corridors between them so that the bears can freely or more securely move from one to another. And again, one of the ways in which to ensure that there's support for this and that this coexistence actually can embed is by making sure that people feel, again, that they have some sort of economic benefit or pride for the fact that this species is increasing and that it is in this area. So we're working with a business network of local producers, but also a lot of local tourism providers, from accommodation to kind of operating companies, that really create products around this species as a way to boost their business, and with that make sure that there's the support to really coexist with this species in the long run. So it's a very brief kind of introduction to some of the things we do. Now, every landscape is different in terms of kind of the composition of species or habitats, or the kind of the density of the people living in the area. So we're in different ways kind of applying these ecological ways of working across the landscapes we work in. But over the last year, what we actually learned in speaking with a lot of the local teams and a lot of the local business owners is that tourism is something that all of them think is a good driving force to really make sure that this support is ingrained, and that the benefit of the fact that rewilding is happening is something that the people living in this area feel they can well benefit from in the long run. Now I'll pause for a couple minutes if there's any questions on kind of this contextual background, and then I would suggest we dive into specifically the work we're doing with regard to nature tourism. Trying to find the chat while I'm saying that, but maybe Theo, if there's any questions coming in, you can.
Yeah. Well, thank you so far, Victor. Though we haven't, your presentation is fully clear. We haven't received any questions so far.
Fully clear or so confusing, people decided it's okay. let it be. No, but then let's dive into the recreation and tourism aspect specifically. So as mentioned, the organization is comprised of several teams. The Nature for People team is where Bart and I, together with another couple of colleagues in the central team and counterparts across all the landscapes, really try to aim to increase commitment for rewilding by creating economic benefits, by creating pride, identity, and in that way incentivize people to change the way they traditionally have managed land or have managed their interaction with wildlife. Within that, there's several kind of streams we're looking at. So from local products by small artisan producers to credits or the ways that we deal with managing forests. But also tourism is a massive one, and is actually one of the priorities for this year, in that we really think that the right type of tourism can help to create this community buy-in and support. With that, ensure that there's a fertile ground to further advance rewilding and to realize more rewilding initiatives. And that if that is done properly, it creates this kind of positive feedback loop, where if there's more wildlife, if there's more wild places, if there's more buy-in from the community, it means there's also more to experience as a tourist, which then again helps to kind of reinforce that whole loop. Having said that, we're also aware that there's challenges when it comes to tourism in terms of spreading it seasonally, but also making sure that there's not hundreds of people kind of disturbing the species in these areas or crowding some of these very small communities and places. So we're really looking at quality tourism rather than large numbers. Very aware of that the type of experiences that we want to help support benefit, especially local entrepreneurs and local communities, not necessarily middlemen. That they have limited impact when it comes to the way that the environment is involved, and there needs to be this kind of educational awareness component as well to really help understand what is rewilding, and also further build the engagement across regional as well as international visitors. Given that tourism is a thing that comes up in all of the landscapes, it's also a key priority for us in our strategy for the next 5 years, in that we aim to funnel an additional 6 million euros in income to local businesses to help them create more jobs. So there's more economic incentive, especially for young people, to stay in these rural areas. And we really want to demonstrate that using tourism as a business case, it can help advance rewilding, it can help inspire people and help them reconnect with nature. Now, if we take a step back on kind of the whole tourism market as a whole, there's lots of different reports, there's lots of different articles, there's numbers that go all over the place in terms of how big is this market, where is it heading, etc. But generally speaking, regardless of what numbers you pick, there's two conclusions that everyone agrees on. First one is that ecotourism or nature tourism as something that people are looking for is growing quite rapidly this decade, both driven by the fact that the younger generation is more kind of sustainability oriented and more aware, but also that the whole urbanization drive has also led to a wish to kind of disconnect every now and then from the city life and reconnect with this natural environment. And the second conclusion is that we as Europeans are actually the biggest spenders when it comes to this type of tourism. But well, we Europeans are big spenders, but we tend to go far away. So we tend to take a plane, go to Africa for a safari, go to Borneo to look for orangutan, or South America to hike through Patagonia. And that's, I mean, it's a luxury position as a continent we're able to do this. But Europe also has some pretty spectacular animals, from lynx to European bison to a colleague of ours saw a pack of wolves here yesterday. So as a continent, we also have quite of these, some of these wildlife watching experiences that we can offer. And we also have stunning places. Just a couple of examples of the landscapes where we operate in. It's even today here driving to the place we're now, it's truly, truly stunning. And it really has this kind of wild, remote feeling compared to many of the highlights that people tend to visit in this continent. So taking that into account, the proposition is quite straightforward in that if we are able to unlock these landscapes in the right way to visitors, that helps them experience this kind of wilder Europe, helps them to reconnect with nature, to spread it geographically so lesser known areas are visited, but also to make sure that there's the right type of educational component in it and that they really interact with local entrepreneurs. We really think it can help make Europe a wilder place. That sounds easy and straightforward, but we did over the past experiences find out that there are some challenges when it comes to realizing this, in that what we noticed in speaking with local businesses is that it's quite difficult for them to compete with the kind of the big players in the market. So on booking.com, for instance, if there's hundreds or thousands of options, how do you make sure that people that actually want to visit these areas are able to find these suppliers? We also noticed that in all the landscapes, there's lots of people doing similar things and kind of trying to reinvent the wheel for themselves, so that there's limited knowledge sharing in that regard, and that there's a lot of scattered initiatives. So people might be a guide and others might be a B&B, and then some people might have wildlife watching hides, but they all do kind of their own thing rather than cooperating and creating products that as a whole they together can provide interested customers with. The digital savviness of a lot of especially the older people living in the areas we work in is not always what one would expect. So some people still use pen and paper when it comes to reservations. Some people it's difficult to get in touch with. Those that do use digital tools to help kind of secure bookings or reach their potential customers pay very high commissions. Yesterday, we spoke with someone that pays a commission of almost 40% per booking, which kind of defeats the purpose for us, and that we want a lot of these revenues to help stimulate this local economy. And then I think the final thing is that also when it comes to really ensuring that the capacity and the infrastructure in the landscapes is in place, there's a need for more training and help, also something we can help with to ensure that the quality and the quantity of certain crucial aspects is there. Now, having taken all these lessons into account, having said, okay, Europe does have potential when it comes to tourism. We really think as Rewilding Europe, tourism can help us to advance our mission. We said, as an organization, we have a role to play there with regards to making sure that all these actors within this tourism ecosystem, so to say, get acquainted with one another and get empowered to cooperate with one another. So what we're now trying to do is build what we call a Rewilding Tourism Network that consists of local businesses, but also of international operators, of local DMCs, ensuring that they know who their target audiences are, helping them with marketing, etc. And we think that if we bring this whole network together, we really help as an orchestrator to give this shape. There's more knowledge sharing across the board. We're able to help suppliers in the landscapes to connect with their potential customers. Overall collaboration and kind of the quality and the knowledge of the way in which we think tourism can benefit will improve. And the end goal is, of course, to really prove and demonstrate that a nature-based tourism economy is feasible in these areas and actually helps to advance the rewilding narrative. Now I'll hand over on this note to Bart, who will take you through each of these components to explain a bit of what we're doing. And since we're using one laptop, I'm just gonna casually flip the screen and give him control.
Thank you so much, Victor, for this introduction. I think it's important to remember of Victor's story that we are on the one hand seeing a growing demand for nature positive tourism, reconnect with nature, and on the other hand we see a supply side that is super different in every natural landscape in Europe, at least in our landscapes. Super diverse. Some landscapes are very hard to even reach. It takes you more than a day, so there's no sense in short experiences, where on the other hand, we have lots of recreational short visits already. So the question is really, how are we gonna fit these demand and supply sides and find out what products, what concepts really work for which landscapes? And that's basically a bit the same as we do on the wilder nature side, right? We try to demonstrate, learn what is needed for nature to recover. We are also experimenting and learning what concepts are needed for nature positive and nature-based economy positive tourism. So therefore, we are following this tourism network strategy, where we try to get a group of people that are all involved in the chain of tourism to work together, learn together, share these insights, and hopefully make a really positive impact on wilder nature in the end, and fight possible harmful aspects of tourism, which are also a massive problem nowadays in some of the landscapes. So we first focus at this moment at the local people involved, at the entrepreneurs, the people coexisting with our landscapes. And that's why we're here in the Apennines. We visited other landscapes. And the tourism suppliers for us are super diverse, right? Whether they are offering an accommodation or a workshop, making cheese while coexisting with predators in the area, with your sheep, or a guided experience, right, that brings you into the area and see how rewilding is taking place and how nature is bouncing back, or even multi-day tours where you have a full holiday where everything's taken care of. Like, the whole spectrum for us is interesting. The only thing that narrows it down is it has to be nature positive and nature-based economy positive, because we want people coexisting in the areas to also benefit. So in the long run, nature will eventually benefit, and we are making Europe a wilder place. So we're looking for all these types of tourism offers, and also for local operators, because especially for the multi-day offers, it's basically impossible to offer it if there's not a local entrepreneur having an inbound tour operator, DMC, that is catering for these experiences, we need them. And even if they are not there, we have solutions to help an entrepreneur start a local tour operator like this. So if there are tourism aspects missing in a landscape, we are also trying to bring that back, just like we try to recover broken aspects of nature, trophic chains or whatever. We are also trying to fix tourism aspects. In some landscapes, there are actually, so here in the Apennines, we have an amazing tour operator, or actually more. If there's one on this slide, wildlifeadventures.it, would everyone advise if you have want a multi-day experience in the Apennines to visit their website and book with their experience. They're amazing. Some landscapes, there's none, like in Romania. So then we find an entrepreneur that's willing and able to start it. And now we have rewildingromania.travel as our own tour operator. But not only tour operators, we also look for guides and connect with them, all to sort of have a good view of what drives the people in the landscapes themselves, what drives their pride, and where do they feel that the economic opportunities are. Then we also have financial models to help them. So we have Rewilding Europe Capital for loans for tourism operators that go up to 100K to help them. And more and more entrepreneurs in our landscapes are actually using those loans. But also we are looking at another level, which are the outbound tour operators, because in Europe we have quite a few really good tour operators that love also bringing people to wilder nature areas in Europe, and are really specifically focused on these wild nature positive and more sustainable aspect. And we love to cooperate with them as well, because they already also have a connection to the demand side. So we are partnering and in discussing and joining them. I have a few examples here of tour operators that we currently work with and are partnering with. A super positive vibe, because we all are aiming for the same goal, to be more sustainable for nature in the long run. And then we have another aspect, which is the fact that we think in order to really demonstrate what concepts fit best for which landscapes, and to be able to quickly experiment with those product market fits, as I'd call it, we follow a digital strategy. So we're building a digital platform like an Airbnb or Get Your Guide type of marketplace, where we are having all our network partners, be it a local accommodation or a large outbound tour operator, also put their offerings on the booking marketplace, and then connected to the demand side, this massively growing demand side. We're super happy to be in Europe with these wealthy people that are looking for this experience, and we're going to try and test what works for what landscape. So is there interest in a specific niche, whatever, let's say bird watchers in the Danube Delta? Are they willing to travel for like multi-days? And then on a booking platform, it's easy to experiment with it, right? We can spend some marketing spend, see if we can reach people, and if they actually book with us, and then learn together with the network, share these insights, what worked, what didn't work, what was the message about that actually triggered the demand side, the travelers to book with this experience, what made it so special. Can we apply that in other landscapes as well, in order to also start slowly upscaling, learn, and then use these insights to upscale later to a total European approach. But first we start in our own landscapes, because we have the connection already with the entrepreneurs, etc. Now, looking at the platform itself, the name we've chosen is Wilder Places Europe. The domain is wilderplaces.com. I think it very much aligns neatly with the payoff of Rewilding Europe, which is making Europe a wilder place. Well, these are the wilder places. Please come and experience them and help drive the rewilding efforts. We're hoping to launch this year, maybe even before summer. If you register, you will get an alert and be updated now and then. You cannot see anything on the website other than the sign-up form, so we're in onboarding mode. In the back end, we are onboarding all these suppliers. That's the reason we are in the landscapes, and we're showing the way the platform operates. I'm going to show you a few pictures just for you to have an idea. It's a very normal marketplace. We can push on the homepage some of the experiences, maybe because we think this landscape needs more attention, or we want to fight seasonality, or we want to bend the type of tourism in high season towards more nature positive instead of here in the Apennines, Roman people that come here drinking too much and not experiencing anything of the local culture, let alone nature. So we can push that. If people search themselves, it's mainly map-based, so they can just see the map of Europe, zoom in, look at the landscapes, see all the offerings, super diverse guides, accommodations, multi-day offerings. They can filter it. I think you all know how a marketplace works. It's up and running. We are here also to discuss with the suppliers what is extra needed for them to be happy with the platform. So already validating if it will work for him, super positive. We haven't had any supplier yet that doesn't want to onboard so far, so we're in a super happy mood. They will get their own profile page. They will have their listings, and as a tourist, you can scroll through them. We will also have some of the networks on the platform. So in quite a few of our landscapes, the entrepreneurs already find each other and meet each other in a business network setting. We're also going to show the business network on the platform as a sort of extra credits for the work they're doing. And then we hope that we are indeed on the right track, because when we talked to people over the past 6 months before building this platform, we saw a huge demand for a specific marketplace for nature positive tourism, because it's lacking. Some of the platforms actually do hop on the sustainability or even nature-based growth opportunities. So they offer a filter for eco or nature-based or responsible, but it's still diluted in the massive amount of offerings that are out there. So in our study that we did when setting up the strategy, we saw lots of people saying, I would love to have a fully focused, and I'm sure that if I book one of these trips, it's actually going to be helping nature come back in Europe. So that'd be great. So we're going to unlock when we've onboarded 3 or 4 landscapes, which is in 2 months' time, we're done with getting the first suppliers on in enough quantity for us to feel confident and open up the platform for our audiences, for people looking for it. Hopefully, let's say somewhere before or after summer. And really looking forward, because we think that bringing people into nature is one of the key success factors. If they reconnect with wilder nature, they are more aware, rationally, but also emotionally, and get more motivated to actually contribute to make sure that we in Europe are changing the curve and going from a downhill curve up towards a nature is bouncing back and recovering, biodiversity is getting back again, carbon is more captured in a more diverse nature, etc., etc. But we truly believe it involves reconnecting people with nature, bringing them out there and showing them the power of nature. So we designed this strategy by following the customer journey. We did all these interviews. We really found out that also on the demand side, there is a massive diversity, right? From small niche specialists like the birders I mentioned to people that want to like a sort of retreat. It's super different, and since every landscape is different, we are really going to try to find which target audience is we should connect to which landscape and which type of offerings, and then help the suppliers in landscapes to develop those offerings more and more while we learn together and share these insights in the network. I have a few examples here of the core concepts that we found when doing the study among the demand side, like all the target audiences, even like corporate programs, right? Boards that want to sort of reconnect to nature and rethink their strategy while sort of listening to the progressive approach of the nature recovery efforts that we do. So again, on both sides, super diverse, but just as we make Europe a wilder place on the nature side, we also looking to demonstrate what works for the nature-based, nature-positive economies in the landscapes by connecting them to all these different types of demand based on all the supply aspects there are. And therefore, this model where we are incorporating everyone in the tourism network, and we're going to work together to learn from it. It does cost money. And although Victor told that we have a decent amount of funding that also keeps on growing, which we're very thankful for our donors, we also said, like, this has to be taking care of itself, this digital tourism strategy. So we will charge a commission on bookings. That's one of the revenue streams that we are implementing. The commission, though, starts at 10%, which is very low compared to the big platforms like Airbnb, Booking.com, Get Your Guide. With a purpose, because we are very strictly on the vetting procedures. Show that in the next slide. But commissions is a model. We also, with the bigger tour operators, are making agreements on a partnership. So more like a fixed fee to be on the platform. Also, it doesn't matter if the tourist books with the tour operator itself or via our platform. We are cooperating in this, and we do get a fund, get funded for it by the tour operator. Hopefully, this will cover our costs, and we will break even in around 3 years. Because we've set a strategy for 2030, which very much aligns with the bigger Rewilding Europe strategy, to first have a proof of concept. That's the phase we are in now, to demonstrate what works, what doesn't, evolve it, grow it, and then when we've tested and proved and feel confident that we did it in our own landscapes, we're also going to expand to other parks, right? So we're going to unlock, we have a European Rewilder network of parks and private equities that are in our network. We're going to onboard them as well, right? If we're successful, we're going to expand, scale it up, wilder parks. We're interested in anyone with a natural park, regional park, that is looking for a way to have tourism work in a nature positive way. So I hope that in the end, we are not only cooperating with Eurosite as we are right now in the partnership, but maybe we can even at some point make tourism work, help make Europe a wilder place, and have you join the network and collaborate on this effort in the future after we've proven that it works in our landscapes. So we hope to see you there at some point. And I think that is for us the main story we wanted to tell.
In a nutshell.
Yeah. Well,
Oh.
Victor and Bart, thanks for this very inspiring presentation with you know, touching upon a lot of topics that are relevant. I really do love your the goal, the mission to connect people with nature, and have this crossover with, you know, tourism and nature and this approach. Um, I think it is a very how to say, a very promising approach for the upcoming years that, as you also said, fits in the trends in tourism, where regenerative tourism is a big thing and being developed in different stages among tourism operators and organizations all over Europe. So I really do think it's the right time also to emphasize on nature and on the rewilding areas. So thanks a lot, and for me, you know, having a live meeting, this would be the moment for asking for an applause for everybody. But maybe the digital thumbs up or can also be shown. But this is
We're not there yet, Theo? And
Oh, no.
it's not an easy job. It is there's a lot of complexities and risks also involved. So I'm also
Yeah.
super interested in to have a chat on, you know, any.
No, I agree, Bart. This is, and maybe we can turn to the you know, end the presentation and have our faces again for everybody available.
Yeah, that's
But no, I agree. I mean, starting up a new business, and that's what it is, with all its vulnerabilities, is a very riskful operation, and so but you know, things start with an idea, and things are starting with a you know, a strong goal, but also starting with a feeling of things happening in the market, of nature protection, but also in the market of interest by humans and by tourists. And this is something you researched already. It's something that I'm you know, working in this field of nature and tourism, also can sense that also due to COVID, but the attention for nature is growing. But so on.
In the meantime,
questions,
yeah, we've been scrolling through the Q&A.
Yeah.
How are we going to answer? Because there's some super nice questions in there, folks.
Yeah, right.
I would love to
agree.
basically,
Well,
yeah.
there is one question already, about, you know, how tourism is a hungry worm that's growing rapidly. I mean, that is a trend, and that's been predicted and taking place. So how do you monitor this growth, and how do you take care of this vulnerable relation between tourism and going out in the field and nature quality? That's one of the questions.
Yeah, just before we're going to answer, I also saw a remark on that our landscapes seem to be more rural, and in that sense, probably have less of over-tourism issues than some of the other participants in this webinar. I think that's very valid. Indeed, we are having more rural areas. Some of them are actually really hard to get to. And so absolute super valid remark, right? I think there are people in this webinar that have way more experience with the effects and maybe also what instruments work or not in terms of over tourism. But having said that, even in our landscapes, we have super weird examples of a TikTok girl that posts something and then 40 buses are instantly entering an area that can never handle this amount of tourism. So
I think with regard to your question, Theo, about the hungry worm, the way we look at it, and this is something that from the beginning, also in speaking with like the landscape teams and other people in the sector, we're very aware of. But with regards to the hungry worm, it's very much about where do you feed it and when do you feed it. So we're focusing on two ways to make sure that we kind of mitigate negative impacts to the highest extent possible. First is the where do you feed this worm? So we try to geographically spread as much as possible rather than having one or two sites where everyone goes to. It's really about using the size of the landscape to make sure that there's a kind of smaller pockets, thereby with less impact on the geographical space. And then with regards to when do you feed this worm, this is also something here in the last couple of days that we've discussed with entrepreneurs, saying there is this seasonality, of course, to the way people recreate and go travel. If we want to break that seasonality, or if we also want to spread out kind of visitors over time, are there certain times of the year where you say it's already too busy, I don't want more people? So for instance, in the summer holidays in Italy, a lot of the people here say, I prefer not. I prefer people to come in the autumn season, for instance, to see the deer rutting, or to come in early spring when, you know, the foliage is green and the bears are waking up. So it's also about making sure that the right hooks are there to incentivize people to not all come at the usual kind of school holiday moments, but to utilize the whole year to make sure that the pressure is mitigated as much as possible over time, besides spreading geographically.
Yeah.
And then we also have a policy that we are really focusing on small scale tourism, right? We do not want buses full of tourists to enter. So we're focusing on the offerings that are for small groups, intimate. So that also helps this hungry worm. I mean, it's where we feed it, when we feed it, but also like the amount we feed it. And it very much helps, because you're saying we're founding a company, and it is, right. We have to make a revenue. We're expending costs, but we're not in it for a commercial purpose. So we do not have to scale our revenue. We have to scale our impact on nature in a positive way.
And I think about that, which is something we didn't mention now, but the commission model that we're using on bookings that were mentioned, he said it starts at 10%, but actually it doesn't go up, it can only go down. So the more rewilding aligned a provider is, and the more they kind of embed this responsible tourism, the whole storytelling, the way they interact with the environment, the lower the commission becomes.
Yeah, so which is a very uneconomical measure, but
it helps.
I love it.
Incentivize them, yeah.
But if the success metric is not a euro, but a positive impact on nature, it's actually a very commercial model, because we are moving the needles, right? But our needles are wild nature in Europe.
Yeah. And I think with your example, you're in the heart of the discussion is how to control, how to manage impact by tourism in the local, community, landscape, nature, and prevent it to become destructive. And that really is a challenge too. One of the challenges you're dealing with.
Yeah. So one of the things I think is also might clarify a lot is that we work with rewilding nature in these areas. We make sure predators are thriving again, and we have a lot of connections with the local people that coexist to make sure that this coexistence is working in a positive way.
Yeah.
But like not with tourists, but also with the people already. So, for example, this is a beer smart community, as we call it, and there's a beer smart community network that we founded and are cultivating in the Abruzzo. You can see it if you enter a village. All the bins here are bear proof, right? If a bear would enter, there would not be anything for him rewarding to re-enter. People know how to react to bears, etc. It's easier to sort of start growing from this bear smart community where people are already aware of how to deal with the coexistence and are already prepared for it, and then start bringing some tourists and then grow it from there, because the community itself is also taking care of this coexistence aspect. So if there would be tourists that throw around and leave lots of food and garbage around, the community will already respond because they do not want the bears to become problematic, right? And they are fully aware of the whole issues and how to challenge this. So I think that also helps the fact that we are very community-based when we operate in a landscape. Besides the nature aspect, also the community aspects. I think that's sort of unique. That's but I mean that helps clarify on that we're not so fearful of. Because we're not on our own. We're doing this with so many people. So all these people and all the entrepreneurs, but also the people just living there. There are beer smart committees here that have explain everyone. And I have to be honest, like not every community is in the beer smart network yet. So those communities, we're not going to focus on our tourism efforts in the beginning. It's more risky for these harmful effects.
And then
Well, that was one of the questions also. How do you manage the interaction and ensure the well-being of animals as well as people? So you already answered the people.
Yeah, and I think to add to that is that kind of the providers and especially the kind of the guides and the tour operators we aim to work with, we expect them to adhere to a certain standard. So we vet them up front and we make sure that they don't kind of disturb bears when they have cubs or that they come too close or all these kind of things. And otherwise, we don't partner with them. So we're very aware of kind of the role we have to play.
We're also quite strict with our approach. We're quite risk averse in the sense that we vet the suppliers, right? So, and they have to sign a agreement in order to become part of the network and be on the platform. But also when they have a new listing, we're also looking at the listing. So each and every offer that they offer there. And then, of course, we have the reviews. So there's a feedback loop when we're live that we'll also monitor, right? We hired, so we're 2 people in the tourism team so far. There's a 3rd person onboarding in May before we go live. That's continuously going to monitor and curate this network and make it more and more positive impact for nature.
And then Theo, I also saw 2 questions on kind of the type of people that can come visit, whether it's too elitist or too expensive. I think also on this kind of one of the things that from many of the entrepreneurs in the areas we operate in, as well as a lot of the landscape teams, one of the things that was phrased was that they wanted to be socially inclusive. So it shouldn't only be for people that are able to kind of fly in, spend thousands of euros, etc., but also especially for people from the region or for students that just want to go camping, for instance, or do more kind of budget trips. So in that regard, because the desire is there to cater and to host kind of a wide demographic of type of visitors by the local businesses here, as well as by the teams, that is also something that this platform and this way of working where we're building this network enables. And that you don't only have to tailor to the kind of the high-end bespoke tourism, but you can also make sure that you facilitate and you kind of empower the younger people or the students that just want to go away for a weekend from the city they live nearby. So it is the social inclusivity is also a thing that's very much on our radar.
So yesterday we onboarded a refurbished castle for super high end, but also we discussed the the manager of a cooperative does a lot of school visits. Right?
Yeah.
Both onboard them. Our only restrictions are it has to be positive for nature and the nature-based economy.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It's also the challenge because it makes it super hard on the platform to make it a very intuitive, user-friendly platform when you have this super diverse offering. So we're really testing and validating with what filters and like to what degree should you be able to keep on making more granular segments, etc. But what makes this so interesting, and this is where we'll learn a lot that we'll share with the rest of the network.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and another question by Henk Singstra is, thanks a lot for the inspiring. Well, that's a compliment. But some conservationists are, however, skeptical or reluctant to open up protected areas for visitors. Do you experience this in your work, and how do you deal with that?
So can you repeat it? Because
Yeah, well, some conservationists are. It's Henk Zengstra's question. Are skeptical and reluctant to open up to protected areas for visitors. Do you experience this in your work, and how do you deal with that?
So I think I understand where that comes from. I think the kind of the landscape approach that we have, where it's 100,000 hectares at least, these areas that we operate in, so they're very sizable. In that, because we try to empower local entrepreneurs and local businesses, we really work to a large degree with the capacity or the businesses that are already in place. In that, if there are pockets where there is no kind of infrastructure or there's no people, then there's not necessarily a need to start establishing new types of infrastructure there to unlock it.
Yeah.
So finding the balance there to kind of how do you empower the local community and the local economy versus how do we make sure that certain kind of strongholds for biodiversity remain untouched. Yeah, that's kind of something we have to take on a landscape by landscape basis, but it's not the goal to have everything everywhere accessible, because if there's no local entrepreneur that says I have a business here or I want to work here, then we're not necessarily going to force them to. So that's a problem that kind of solves itself in a lot of the areas.
Yeah.
And again, our landscapes are rural, depopulated. So I reckon for a lot of the other parks, it's impossible for nature to recover if there are no protected areas. It's really dependent on the park or the region you operate in. But yeah, our landscapes are massively large and usually very depopulated. So that makes it different, right?
Yeah. That's well, and the question by Nico Beunders, he's asking, can ecotourism replace traditional activities that have been shaping the landscape and which are the core of local culture and identity? Tourism can be only one component of rural livelihoods.
No, it's a great question, because that's exactly what we're trying to prove and demonstrate. So, for instance, the example I mentioned about the hunting concessions in the Velebit in Croatia.
Yeah.
Traditional way of dealing with wildlife in that area by local kind of huntsmen and villagers has always been rather extractive. So it's nice to have a piece of venison on the table for Christmas and certain occasions. So hunters would go out and really look at it as a resource. But if these people and these kind of traditions of looking at nature that way can be incentivized through other economic means, to regard the bison and the deer in that area not necessarily as an extractive resource, but a resource that somehow is able to provide different ways of economic benefit, then yeah, we hope to be able to demonstrate that ecotourism over time can replace certain traditional activities that have shaped the landscape, and that might have had a more negative effect on the biodiversity and state of the nature.
Yeah, I really like Nico's question as well, because I think one of the things that we are dealing with in our landscapes is that local culture and identity are also degrading because it's depopulating. Young people are leaving for the cities. There are only a few elderly left that still want to, that hang on to their traditional way of farming, for example, but it's about to die. And in that sense, if their son could run a nature guide business, for example, you could actually stay or just maybe start a coffee bar, or and also it can help maintain that identity and culture, because it is degrading at the moment. It is an extra component for the economy, but it's also a component that's often needed in our landscapes. If we would not bring that component, it could actually die out.
Yeah.
And it's also specifically for rewilding, because it's we use the opportunity of depopulated areas to bring back nature or let nature bounce back. But the people are usually more happy with the fact that there's some extra tourism, and it can help maintain their pride and their identity, which is also interesting for tourism, right?
But it's something we aim to demonstrate over time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's super. And Kazimir Rapsky also put some question forward. First of all, he mentioned, developing the Rewilding tourism network sounds like a very good idea, and he's, I suppose, although he's not there anymore, but I think he's willing to participate from Poland. But he also says, be aware, there are some examples where tourism on valuable areas is understood only as exploitation of nature, and nature is threat only as a product. So he's from the protection paradigm to give his response. Could you react on that? And second question, and the same one, nature. He asked nature's own ways to have it better described. So these are the
more on the rewilding aspect. Maybe to the first point first. Yes, I think we can all mention examples where nature, in combination with tourism, is really seen as kind of a product. Whether it's whether you go to certain African national parks where there's 20 jeeps looking at a lion, then it does feel quite commercialized, obviously.
Yeah.
I think in the context where we are working and the way we're trying to pivot this and set this up, this all comes back to kind of the type of tourism we want to support, enable, and stimulate. So it's really, again, about incentivizing these local businesses to really embrace this rewilding narrative and this way of operating. It's about vetting that kind of operators and providers you bring in externally. All just to make sure that kind of these core values are really secured. So that there are examples. I hope and I think that the way we're approaching it, we're able to kind of mitigate that. And with regards to nature's own ways,
just to add to this, because it's also I think we have to realize that we're balancing towards, like, this is one option, tourism. The other option is no tourism, but the money needed is needed, right? So either we find another revenue stream or funding stream to solve it, and then tourism might not be needed, could be, but we think that tourism could be a very valuable way to support the nature-based economies, have people embrace their wilder nature and love to coexist with the wilder wildlife surrounding them, and make them proud again. So it's very delicate in what type of tourism, but it's also a solution. And if this is not the solution, then what's the other solution, right? If you can, if all the oil sheikhs put all their money in rewilding nature in Europe, then we maybe don't have to do all this. We can just make it exclusive. So this is one solution that we're hoping to demonstrate and catalyze.
Yeah.
Also because the other option is, and also is a bridge to what is letting nature lead the way again. I think one of the aspects that I really liked when I got into contact with rewilding is that if nature has always been taking care of itself and fluctuating towards whatever, but the way we're dealing with it in a lot of the landscapes now is a lot of maintenance. It's a lot of conservation, which involves a lot of money, right? So one of the reasons why we are operating only at scale is that it's more cost effective. We need less of a nature-based economy, less money in the area, introducing in the area, because nature is doing its own thing without too much conservation. And yes, we have to intervene if there is a conflict with a bear that became problematic. It does cost time and effort of our teams, etc. But we're trying to restore nature in a way that it's the broken links are fixed again, and she can take care of herself and start leading the way. We don't know where, but it's a natural way of evolution again, without the human interface and the and that also helps making the tourism drive be less big, because we need less money, because the conservation is supposed to be cheaper, or let's say more cost effective.
Maybe time for one final question, because the next business we're supposed to meet here is waiting for us.
I'll make it two, Victor, to just stretch out your time schedule. But there is a question of Teresa Maria Gamito asking, do you make any choice of the operators that you will work in your areas? And if yes, how do you choose them? Do you make a special capacity building for them, or maybe take other measures? That is the question Teresa is asking.
So yes, when it comes to kind of local providers, it's like we said, it's providers that are kind of embracing this rewilding narrative, that are part of the business networks, that have the relationships with the local teams, and also that are of a certain kind of standard or quality. So yes, there's a kind of a pre-selection in that. When it comes to operators in terms of travel agencies, like we mentioned before, there's a vetting to make sure that kind of the values that we intend to stimulate, that they are embraced, and that there's a formal agreement underlying that. And then when it comes to really upskilling kind of local businesses, yes, there's a myriad of trainings and kind of ways in which we can support them, from kind of helping with English classes based tailored to hospitality, to helping them with kind of marketing kind of instruments, or what type of pictures to choose, but also these micro loans through the kind of the Rewilding Europe Capital facility we have, if they want to do an investment into anything to kind of to increase the capability or capacity of their business. So yes, we're on many ways we're working with them to really curate this network.
And in all honesty, that really works to make them more nature positive. The fact that we help them so much with all these skills, with all the trainings on like nature-based tourism and English, because we're not going to train them in mass tourism, right? We're going to train their skills in nature positive tourism.
Right.
That's,
and the last question for myself is trying to connect people to nature is a very difficult, maybe psychological task to touch each individual in the heart. And to do so is you can organize, you can manage, you can develop experiences in each place that is able to give this very strong touch in the heart. Are you also sort of creating these experiences? Is that part of your tourism supply development arrangements that you're making, pointing out, you should do this to have, for example, not get in touch with a bear, but seeing a bear is already a phenomenal experience. But for example, is that part of your program?
It is something in the midterm, kind of the medium long term, that we're looking into. So we'll start with really helping to cater and facilitate towards people that already have an interest in kind of seeing and experiencing nature. But a big drive is also to bring new people in to reconnect with nature and to change mindsets. We are exploring kind of what are the angles or the hooks in which way we can reach those audiences and incentivize them to come visit. Because in the end, I do, like you say, if you actually have this experience and this interaction with the local people, with the natural environment, with the wildlife, and once you experience it and you feel it, you also start caring about it more. So it's also a way of kind of embedding engagement and awareness in new audiences.
Yeah, and then with the reach we have at Rewilding Europe, we also have a very diverse audience in the sense that if people from a city experience this first time off, yeah, we're working with vetted but also very known inbound tour operators are now here in the Apennines. They do forest bathing with people. It's super intense for them already. But we also have ecologists with a super aware and knowledgeable brain that are way more interested in the complexity of, that are way more mature in this. So we're also looking for, okay, how do we connect you with, and which guide could actually bring your emotional level and dedication to this rewilding efforts higher. Yeah.
And then maybe a final comment from us. Like we mentioned, we're also learning, we're exploring. So if anyone wants to get in touch or follow up by email or schedule a call to exchange ideas or to exchange experiences, we'd be very happy to. Please do reach out.
Especially because of the diversity of the people in the webinar. It's for us very interesting. Right?
Yes.
Way more experience with overcrowded touristic places than we have.
Yeah.
If we have any instruments developed that are helpful for us, I mean, yeah, let's join forces, share insights, and bring nature back in Europe.
Yeah, right. Well, Bart and Victor, thanks a lot for your presentation and for this very important development. I think in crossing over the bridge between nature and recreation and tourism. I think you gave a marvelous example of a very promising direction you're working on. And yeah, I can only repeat the words you say. Well, this is an outreach to everybody to join and help and make this maybe become this rewilding tourism network, so to say. So thanks a lot. This is the moment for the digital flower. So here they are.
Thank you.
Thank you
For inviting us, Theo. And
don't hesitate to sign up at wilderplaces.com, but also if you want to have a personal contact, Theo has our email addresses, and you probably can find us on LinkedIn and wherever. So
yeah, for everybody,
do reach out.
Well, for everybody in the audience, if you want to be in contact, just send a mail to info@eurosite.com and .org, I'd say, and we'll keep you posted and hand over your information to Victor and Bart. Well, again, thanks a lot. Lots of success in the Apennines. A bit of jealousy, although I heard it's raining. The sun is shining in the so everyone has a piece of the good side of life. So
exactly.
Thanks a lot. Have a nice day and hope to see you again.
Yes. Take care.
Take care. Bye bye.